Let me ask you something real. Why do people act like silence means surrender? Why do they assume that just because you're calm, you won't bite back? Just because you're no longer reactive, you're somehow incapable. Here's true. You didn't stop responding because you're afraid. You stopped responding because you're free. And freedom doesn't argue. Freedom doesn't chase. Freedom doesn't perform. So let it be known, don't mistake peace for permission. What peace actually is. Peace isn't passivity, it isn't avoidance, it's not spiritual bypassing, and it's definitely not weakness. Peace is clarity, it's knowing exactly who you are and no longer needing to prove it in the moment. It's emotional discipline. It's energetic protection. It's weaponized stillness. Peace doesn't mean you won't fight. It means you won't fight everyone and you won't fight everything because you've seen what it costs. You've bled for your boundaries. You've cried through your clarity. You've lost people just to protect your nervous system. So, no, you're not quiet because you're scared. You're quiet because you've healed. The power of choosing stillness. There is a level of healing that requires restraint. Not because you're scared, because you finally understand the assignment. There's a version of you who would have snapped, who would have matched energy, who would have explained herself to people who already decided she was the problem. But this version of you, she doesn't perform, she doesn't tap dance, she doesn't go to war just to be heard. She lets the silence speak. She lets the fruit speak. She lets her absence become the message. Because at some point, peace stops being the goal and becomes your guardrail. Stop mistaking stillness for permission. So let's get this one thing straight. Just because you didn't respond doesn't mean you didn't notice. Just because you didn't check someone doesn't mean you couldn't. Just because you carry peace doesn't mean you lost your edge. This version of you doesn't need confrontation to feel powerful because she is no pushover. She's a boundary in motion. So, no, they don't get to weaponize your silence. They don't get to twist your healing into guilt. They don't get to treat you like you're a weak just because you're whole. Let them test your stillness, but don't let them confuse it for submission. Peace isn't access. Calm isn't clearance. Stillness is not permission. The new weapon, discipline. Peace doesn't mean you left the battlefield empty handed. It means you came back with strategy. Now you know what's worth addressing and what's just noise. Now you can feel the shift before the attack. Now you understand the difference between sacred conflict and senseless chaos. That's called weapon discipline. You still have the sword. You just don't swing it for sport. You're not reactive. You're ready. You're not quiet because you're unsure. You're quiet because you're confirmed. For the ones misjudged in their healing, if you've ever been mistaken for weak because you stop explaining yourself, this is your reminder. You didn't soften. You just stopped begging to be seen. You didn't lose your bite. You just stopped chewing glass to keep the peace. You're not cold. You're clear. You're not distant. You're discerning. You didn't lose your passion. You just stopped giving it away to the undeserving. Let them talk. Let them guess. Let them misunderstand. You don't owe them access to what you bled to rebuild. Peace isn't a prop. It's your posture. And your restraint, that's not fear. That's spiritual strength. When to hold peace and when to pick up the sword. You're not wrong for asking, should I choose peace? Or is this the moment I pick up the sword? Let's be real. Peace is not always silence. Peace is not pretending to be unaffected. Sometimes peace is a boundary that shakes the room. Sometimes peace sounds like confrontation, but it leads to freedom. So how do you know? Check the cost. If speaking up will create clarity, say it. If setting the record straight protects your alignment, do it. If you're grounded, not spiraling, go for it. But if you're speaking from survival, not strategy, pause. Big pause. If your hands are shaking, your voice is trembling, your chest is tight, that's not clarity. That's your inner child set tripping. There's a difference between a sword and a trigger. One is power, the other is pain. So, balance means knowing when to speak and when to shift the room without saying a word, when to draw a line, and when to walk away from the entire battlefield. You don't have to be all peace or all fire. You can be both. You can be still and still know how to move mountains. You can be soft and still know when to raise your voice, your boundary, or your hand if it comes to that. You don't live in a war, but remember how to survive one. And that memory doesn't make you unstable. It makes you wise. Before we close, a closing affirmation. Put your hand on your chest or let the words fall onto your spirit. My peace is not permission. It is protection. I no longer perform. I no longer pursue. I don't fight every battle because I already won the war. I speak when spirit says move. I rest when I've said enough. And I do not need to raise my voice to raise the standard. If you made it to the version of you that no longer needs to scream, beg, or chase, honor that, because no one saw what it took to become this grounded. No one knows the version of you that once fought for survival inside your own soul. No one knows how hard it was to stop performing just to stay in the room. So let your silence speak now. Let your stillness do what your words never could. They don't know what it costs you to carry peace. They don't know the weight of choosing stillness instead of retaliation. They don't know how much you buried to become this quiet. So don't move. Don't fold. Don't go back just to be understood. You're not hard to read. You're just no longer available to be misinterpreted. And from this moment forward, your peace doesn't apologize. It protects. It remains wise. It remains your spiritual weapon, your spiritual strength, your soul's truth. This is Empowered Shadows. Thank you for listening.